I guess we'll just kind of start by tell us a little bit of your backstory for those who don't know with
Okay.
The Centennial Lakes Police Department. Just start there.
Okay. I started at Circle Pines, Lexington in April of 1985 as a patrol officer. I served on patrol close to 5 years when I was asked to serve as the department investigator. And so I started in October of '89 working investigations. And it was in 1990 that the city of Centerville began contracting with us. And so we took on a third city. And so I would fluctuate between handling patrol and investigations till we got enough officers on staff to move forward. The chief at that time then asked me to serve as his deputy chief in addition to working the investigations. And so I did that together with the investigations from '91 until the end of '97 when they then asked me to apply for the chief's position and serve as acting chief for a year. So I started serving as chief of the police in 1998. And then it was in 2004 at the beginning that I was diagnosed with a autoimmune disease called sarcoidosis. And in my research and in meeting with the doctor, came to find out that it had not only attacked my lungs, which it does quite often in people in America, but it had attacked my heart as well. And in fact, in June of 2004, I had a pacemaker implanted because my AV node in my heart had been destroyed. It's the electrical system from the atrium to the ventricles in the heart. And I was actually out on a run with the deputy chief at the time and noticed that I was becoming short of breath. Tests that they conducted, they thought first I had lymphatic cancer and then determined that it was the sarcoidosis. In meeting with a doctor down at Mayo, one of 6 in the world that has done research into cardiac sarcoidosis, I was informed that from diagnosis to death was 5 years. I was still healthy enough that I continued to work, but had to look at what would the future hold. And with the 3 cities and the dealing with 24 staff members and the councils and administrators, I thought, you know, if I just have a few years to live, I want to make sure that I enjoy my family and able to do things that I would like to do. And so I decided to take an early retirement at the end of 2004. One of the things that I did shortly after I left the agency here, in addition to taking care of my grandson for daycare, the chief asked that I come back and do backgrounds on potential officers that they were hiring, which I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed because I worked many years investigation and enjoyed that thoroughly. And during that time, when a officer at a neighboring agency took his life, I realized that the officers probably would appreciate having a chaplain for them as well as for those that they serve in the public. And I had served as a Anoka County peer counselor since 1990 and checked with the staff here, and they felt that that would be appropriate. So I actually enrolled in school to get a degree to serve as a chaplain, and then worked part-time at the local elementary school as a para. And that worked well until the end of 2007 when I was so ill they brought me to Mercy Hospital and stated I couldn't work anymore because my blood and oxygen circulation had reduced to the point where it wasn't viable. So that's the basic background as to what happened, and then from there I deteriorated to the point where I needed to have a pacemaker defibrillator implanted. It was at Unity Hospital, and my heart just took off, and the medical staff was in a semicircle around me, actually waiting for my heart to just explode. I was fortunate that it didn't, but they wouldn't release me from the hospital until they put in a pacemaker defibrillator. And then my heart deteriorated to the point where I couldn't walk from one side of the room to the other. And so they implanted a heart pump, which is basically, they open you up and it's just like putting in a new heart, but they implant a pump which then takes the blood from your left ventricle and brings it up through that pump to your aorta and then circulates the blood and oxygen throughout your body. And I had that for 8 months, and during that time frame my heart muscle continued to turn into scar tissue. In April of 2007, in tests they found out that 30% of it at that time was already scar tissue. And it continued to deteriorate even with the experimental medicines and whatnot that they used. And so they said if I did not receive a heart, I probably would not be around. My family came over to say goodbye, and I was very blessed to have the heart pump installed and have that to keep me alive. And then I was very fortunate to receive a heart transplant in February of 2009.
So from 2004, getting that 5-year diagnosis, and we're sitting here now in 2013, do you kind of feel like this is just extra time?
Oh yes, yeah. From the time I was told the diagnosis of death or a heart transplant within 5 years, and of course you're in denial, and my daughter will tell you, I said I would never get a heart transplant, I didn't need one. But as you progress and get worse in that progression, it's like I was begging for them to put in a heart pump so that I could even walk around and do things normally. And with that heart pump, it was amazing what I could do. I couldn't do everything that I used to, but it was a lot better, especially with the blood and oxygen circulation. But then after receiving the heart, even though I picked up a virus from my donor and was quite ill for the first year, after recovering from that, I was able to return to school to finish my training. I enrolled with the MESCA program. It's the Minnesota Emergency Service Chaplain Association, started by Dr. Jeffrey Stewart in Minneapolis PD, along with Dan Carlson, a former chief in Eden Prairie, and John LeMay, a gentleman who worked with LifeSource and then also was a chaplain. And they started the program training chaplains to serve in the ministry of presence and service and relationships with any walk of life that you would encounter. And so that's where I completed my training, as well as training at Bethel, and then came back to the department here and asked them if they would be willing to have me serve voluntarily as their police chaplain. And they welcomed me with open arms, which I was very grateful for.
So what has that experience been like for you and for the department as well, since you've been back here and serving as the chaplain?
Well, a lot of the officers, I was their boss. And so the first thing I had to tell them is, now you're my boss, I'm here to serve you. And a lot of them I did the backgrounds on. And so I had a relationship with them and felt very comfortable. My biggest concern at first was actually making them feel comfortable with me, and to show to them that I was here to serve them. And so coming into the program, there's a dual role in the chaplaincy, and larger departments have separate chaplains handling the internal, meaning dealing with the officers and issues that they might have or their family members, and then the external, and that's dealing with the trauma that happens on the street with the individual calls that they get to, and the officer can make a determination whether or not a chaplain should be called, or sometimes the families even request that a chaplain be called. And so because it's a smaller agency and I am the only chaplain, I handle both roles, and I enjoy both roles because I like to ride with the officers to get to know them better. We've been able to develop a whole different relationship from where I was before as their supervisor. Now, like I say, I'm serving them in any role that they ask me to serve. and then also in handling the difficult calls that they go on. I've been on incidents of traumatic death, just suicide situations. I've been on situations where someone has died suddenly in the home, and all those instances are very traumatic for the family members. And so just being there to provide comfort until someone else can come, whether it be their clergy, a family member, a friend, whatever they're comfortable with. We're there to just be with them to provide whatever comfort and help we can. I have brochures that I give to them. I've put a little one together that's to help them through the difficult things that have to be taken care of, because even if you have someone that has been ill and may be dying, the actual time of death is traumatic no matter what. And so just having that time to spend with them and to be there for them has been so helpful. And for myself, I enjoy being part of that and just serving them in that manner.
What have you heard from members of the department who maybe were here previously, and were you, now correct me if I'm wrong, but were you saying the department didn't have a chaplain before you, or were there?
When I served as chief and when we were here, there were a core of individuals from Anoka County that we could call on if need be.
Okay.
It was most difficult just because, as anyone in Anoka County knows, it's a large county. And there were very few chaplains that were serving. And as myself, I'm volunteer, and so if I'm not available, I'm hoping that there's another chaplain from a surrounding agency that could come and help. But it was very rare that we were able to get a chaplain out in a situation just because of the low numbers that we had. And so the MESCA program is helped so much. And it started after the collapse of the 35W bridge. And what they wanted to do is make sure that those are coming to serve the people are actually helping them and not making matters worse. You know, you don't need someone coming out and proselytizing their faith. You know, your faith is important to you and you need to stay true to that, but on the other hand, you're there to serve and to provide a ministry of presence and to comfort. And you know, if something becomes of that later on down the road, that's something to deal with later. But we're basically, as chaplains, called on to be that person to provide the strength and comfort and support and any help we can. During that first initial hour, 2 hours, we had a drowning incident that I was involved with the family for 2 days. That's the longest incident that I was called on to be a part of. And I was very grateful to be there to help that family. And it was a large extended family and very difficult for them. And even though they had a whole different set of ideals for their religion, it was totally fine with me, and I tell them right from the beginning who I am, and I want them to be comfortable with me. I'm very comfortable if they would ask me to leave, although that's never happened. So,
talking a little bit about the internal chaplaincy, if you will, the work that you do with the police officers. So often people think of police officers as tough and can do anything. Just speak to the needs. I mean, they're humans too,
yes.
And they deal with a lot more.
You hit that right on the head, and that's we discovered in Anoka County, which has been throughout law enforcement. In the olden days, I say in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s, you know, the officers were to be tough, and so you went home and you either took it out in the bottle or you took it out on your family members, and which was totally unhealthy. And yes, when you're dealing with traumatic situations, your emotions need to be dealt with. And so we had Dr. Dennis Conroy from the St. Paul Police Department, who was a licensed psychologist and a sergeant there, who was in their employee assistance program, come out and train an entire group of us from all over Anoka County, from the dispatch office, from the sheriff's office, and from every agency in Anoka County. And since that time, we've had this service to provide to the officers that when they have a traumatic situation, we have a debriefing if they request it, but then we're available to meet with them one-on-one just to go over the different emotions and the things that you're dealing with. And so I'm still part of that. And as a chaplain here, I can expand that role to be more on a one-on-one basis, just riding with the officers and, you know, finding how they're doing with a situation that they might have dealt with. And if they call me out either to deal with situations that they're dealing with in their family or whatnot, I have the opportunity to spend more time with them because I'm basically doing this volunteer work. I volunteer for other agencies as well, but I can dedicate more time to spending with them and helping them through the issues. And a lot of times, again, it's just having someone to be a sounding board. And from that perspective, I understand where they're coming from. I know what they're dealing with because I served on the street with them, and I've been through a lot of their experiences. And as you probably in your work have found out in different situations, they all affect us differently. You have a young officer that is dealing with a baby not breathing and they have young children at home. That's very traumatic to them. Where you have someone else who's been in law enforcement for many years, they might be dealing with a situation in an elderly person, and that reminds them of their parents who are aging and ill, or a grandparent. And so different things affect different individuals at different times, and you never know, but you just want to be available to be there for them and assist them in any way you can.
How do you think that your personal traumatic experiences with your health prepares you for the work that you're doing now?
Oh, immensely. I mean, I probably, without the grace of God and the help of the medical people that took care of me throughout the time from 2004 to 2009 and continue to now because they monitor me all the time. I take anti-rejection drugs, which I will take for the rest of my life. But through that whole experience, to realize the assistance and the love and support that people provided to me was just such a blessing. And to be able to be here to give that back is something that I feel that the Lord saved me from death to do something to help others, and I want to respond to that and do what I can to be available for whatever the need may be. And that's why I serve as a chaplain here. I serve with the heart transplant support group that I'm part of down at the University of Minnesota. We're called Second Chance for Life Foundation. And all the people that are coming in, just like I was, you're just shocked when they tell you you need a heart transplant and you don't know what's going to happen. And then to see people there that are sitting across the table from you that have had a heart transplant 25 years ago that are still living, and people that have gone through a lot of the trauma that you have is so helpful. And then I also serve for LifeSource, the organ procurement center for the state of Minnesota, North and South Dakota. Just telling them, you know, without a donor, I would not be here. And most people end up becoming a recipient instead of a donor, but to have people sign up to become a donor is so wonderful for individuals like myself, but for other people as well. Because with the advancements in medical science to continue the life of individuals, and one person can help up to 60 people, is so wonderful. And the people that lose their loved ones, it's kind of like their loved one lives on in the lives of others. And if they want to, they can have contact with them and hear the heart beating in someone else, or you know, the lung or the kidney, and so, and many times it's a wonderful blessing for them in that as well.
What does it mean to you, having been, you know, because of your health, forced out of the line of work that you enjoyed so much, to feel now to be back around that work? Oh,
I enjoy it immensely, and yes, I felt, and I left on my own because I knew that I had the choice to stay, but I knew my health would have been deteriorating, and I did not feel that I should not give 100% to my position, but also for my own family sake, I wanted to spend as much quality time. and having been given the gift of a second chance at life, I just feel so blessed to be able to come back and to work with the individuals that I worked with before. And so being able to come back and share just a little part of that, it's difficult, especially when I ride with the officers. I want to jump out of the car and I help them, but I can't, and I'm not licensed anymore to do that. And it would actually be more of a detriment to them than a help. And so I sit there with my seatbelt buckled and pray that things go well for them while they're out on the call. But yes, I really enjoy being able to be part of this organization and the whole Anoka County law enforcement family, because we are a family.
Is there any advice that you would have for people that when their life gets turned upside down like yours did, any advice for them on how to meet those challenges and persevere?
I think the first thing would be to seek out help. And a lot of times, especially for folks that are caregivers, people that are used to being the person in charge or whatnot, that's the hardest thing. A lot of us talk about that down at our transplant support group. We're all that type A personality, and we're the ones that could handle everything. We're the ones that could do everything, and now you find yourself in a totally different role where you can't do anything. And so to encourage people to reach out to those who are wanting to help. And that's the amazing thing, is when you actually share what difficulties you're going through, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, or whatever you're dealing with, to be able to be honest, to share. People who have been through that situation will reach out to you and they'll help you. And your loved ones, many times, you think that, oh, they're going to shun you in that. And the majority of the time, that's not the case. There's, of course, a couple of wonderful websites, the Caring Bridge, which I know everyone's familiar with. There's another wonderful website called Lots of Helping Hands. Lots Helping Hands is what it is. And basically, on that situation, whatever your difficulty may be, maybe you just had a baby and you need some help around the house, or maybe you had a medical issue, or maybe someone died suddenly, and as a family member signs up and goes on there, it's a free site, and then you just tell your friends and family what help you need. And myself, for instance, when I had my heart pump and I was unable to do a lot of those things, individuals that I was going to school for, officers from this agency, family members, neighbors, people that I hadn't even met, volunteered to come over and do things in the house, bring us food, drive me to the cardiac rehab that I needed to go to. And that's what I would say, is they need to reach out and say, I do need help, and then be willing to accept it and work from that.